Hey folks, Eshan here with All Wise Transformation, where we have conversations about mental health, spiritual practice, and self-care. And I'm always looking and creating space to have conversations with people who are living authentically and who are living in a way that is inspiring, that is beautiful. And I have a guest with me today who is so inspiring because of her work and movie. If you ever seen yeah, Yolanda, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, hi. Well, I'm Reverend Yolanda. I'm a trans femme genderqueer singer, songwriter, and interfaith minister. And I guess the movie you're talking about was the Old Time Gospel Hour movie, did you say? Oh,
Yes.
cool, cool, cool.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's
you
it's
can see
it's
it.
it's on Amazon
It's
Prime.
on Amazon Prime, yeah. So if y'all want to check it out, it's really fun. I did this series of cabaret shows in New York City for 2 years, and I won two Mac awards for these shows. And then a filmmaker wanted to do a movie, and so mostly we went out to Colorado and filmed some of that, but also he came to New York and filmed me at the duplex doing the show. So, and then of course there's interviews with Glenn, who has since passed away, but I'm so glad I have him, in all those interviews. He was so funny and silly. It was just adorable.
On your webpage, if you scroll all the way down, there's a picture
Yes. Yeah.
of Glenn. And
Yeah.
it's like I remember when I first met the two of you. It was years ago at Easton Mountain. I
Oh,
was
yes.
I was dating somebody at the time, and we were in love,
Yeah.
and we were like, we want you to marry us.
Oh, we had the greatest opportunities to do that very thing together with people, and it was really amazing to have that kind of experience, with my husband, because we were obviously both reverends, and we went to One Spirit Interfaith Seminary in New York City, and then people started asking us to facilitate their wedding, and it was lovely. It really was very
Oh,
nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was honored that I was able to meet Glenn because
I'm glad you did.
he's this
Yeah,
beautiful, beautiful soul. Yeah.
he
I just
certainly
remember how
is.
smart he was when I was
Oh,
having a conversation with him. I was like, "Whoa, that's pretty sexy."
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he was quite the intellectual, actually, and spiritually, my guru. I mean, so it was an amazing combination, and he was a sexy man too, and so it was this awesome combination of, for me, sexual attraction and mutual spirituality, and this incredible knowledge of almost any subject you could bring up to him. He would know something about it. And so sometimes he was, he's always telling me something about something. And sometimes I would be just like, enough already, enough. But since he's passed away, I'm like, oh, I wish I had those, conversations again. But also I'm remembering, oh, you were right about this. He would tell me things about all kinds of stuff, but then as I move along and I experience some of the things he was talking about, I'm like, wow, how about you? No, he was something. He really was.
Yeah, yeah.
And I feel him with me, like, so present. I mean, his first anniversary of his passing was Friday, March 14th, which was, like a week ago, at the time of this recording that we're doing. Um, and it was incredible. Like, I have the strangest, most interesting story around this, if you want to hear.
Yeah.
Well, Glenn was really, we thought he was super, super healthy. Like, he really wasn't, he never showed any signs of any kind of problem. At one point, we discovered that he was he had hep C from previously. He had been an intravenous drug user, and but there's a cure for that, and so he went through the whole thing, and his death was such a shock. And so he passed on March 14th, but it was only 2 weeks that he really had any suffering or problem or anything. It started with what he would call acid reflux, and then it became hard to breathe, and then things happened, and he finally had a heart attack. But so these uh, past 2 weeks, at the beginning of when last year, when he started feeling bad, guess what I was doing? This was so bizarre. So, I moved up here. I spent 30 years in New York, and of course, I'm always doing some kind of creative project, and have been, auditioning for TV and film and Broadway and all that kind of stuff for many, 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 many years. I've always been really out loud and proud, and I think it's taken the industry a long time to catch up with actors who are out loud and proud, and me being trans femme, gender queer, how I describe myself. Not a lot of roles, for actors uh who are trans. So amazingly enough, about 2.5 weeks ago, I got a call from a casting agency that I'd worked with before in New York, and they asked me to audition for a part in a television series that's being developed and going to be aired later this year on Hulu. And I was like, I always take an audition, but I'm always like, okay, I'm auditioning, and I always put myself into it. But yet, when it's done, I
Right.
release it and I go about my life, because
Yeah.
you never know. Well, 3 days after I auditioned, the casting director called me back and said, "You've got the part." And I didn't believe her, because it was such a it was a guest star role in a major TV series, science fiction TV series, my favorite genre, that is being developed now, right? With a name celebrity attached to it and all of that. And so it was a high budget, 20th Century Fox, high budget production. So I was like, I don't believe you. Just my disbelief was just, and she kept saying, "No, this is real, this is real." I said, "Okay, call my manager." And like, I don't really have a manager, but my cousin works as a talent scout, actually, for Vision Los Angeles, which is a big modeling agency, and he travels around the world and everything. So I called him and I said, can you talk to this person? And he calls, and he does. He calls me back. He goes, "No, this is real. You have to do this." So he negotiated this contract for me, and it was awesome. Actually, it was so cool. Like, they picked me up here at my place. I live in this little 1960s mobile home, and here comes the limo driving.
I love it. I love it.
I'm like, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm just like, okay, my life is about to change. And it did. I stepped into the limo, went to New York, filmed the stuff. And the last day of filming was 2 weeks. And the last day of filming was Glenn's death anniversary, the day he passed. And the whole experience occurred within those 2 weeks last year, when he was having a hard time and then finally passed away. And I was like, and I got to tell the director this story, and his eyes went wide. He was like, wow. And I just really had this sense that, I mean, I'm talented. I audition for things. I understand, there, of course, there's that, I'm not denying that. But yet at the same time, I felt like Glenn had just done something from the other side, that like allowed me to step into this opportunity, and it was life changing. It really was. It was a dream come true for me. So there's been a shift, Eshin. There's been a
Yeah.
real shift in my sense of allowing good things to come to me. I guess I've spent a year being sort of dark, and really disappointed in life and stuff like that.
But
Um,
I think you're allowed though. I think that
yeah,
that's
yeah.
sort of the process.
Mhm.
I know it's easier for me to say, to sort of sit with that.
Yeah.
But
But
I feel like there isn't anything wrong with that.
no, I agree with you. And it was hard for me because, I like to be up and happy and positive and all those things, and everything. But sometimes that's a barrier to my true feelings.
Yeah, yeah.
And if anything, Glenn's passing really, I don't know, got me down to an authenticity that I don't think I've experienced before. And I appreciate your sense of introducing me that way is because authenticity has always been very important to me and Glenn, but I think there was a level that I hadn't gotten to yet,
Mm, mm, mm.
and his passing facilitated that. And then I mean nights of, just real grief and all of that, but for this to happen on his first anniversary of his passing, was really, really amazing to me. So
Yeah.
yeah.
The thing when I went to your website that it's this cute little blurb that I really enjoyed reading, and I was
Oh,
like,
cool.
wow, that really encompassed. Again, like I'm gonna have information of Reverend Yolanda's Spotify and her webpage
Thank you.
down below, so folks could definitely do some beautiful exploring of Yolanda's webpage and her songs.
Thank
So,
you.
but the thing that stood out to me, Yolanda, was that you wrote down Reverend Yolanda building bridges of love and compassion between diverse communities through the power of inspirational music, speaking engagement, and performing art experience. I was just like, wow, that really is you.
I mean, I was trying to, what do they call it? Your elevator pitch or something. But I was trying to break it all down into something, sort of easy to understand because, I get all kinds of questions and stuff, and people don't sometimes don't know what to do with me, and everything like that. But I'm like, no, I'm just, trying to build bridges of love and compassion, really with my talent and everything. I mean, it's like, there's a reason for this
Yeah,
gift, there's
yeah.
a reason for the gifts I have. And I've always been like, um, let me use them in service somehow,
Hmm.
to spirit, to community, to right now I'm really, really, and this was big for Glenn too, is community building. And that's why I was telling you about my concert on April 5th. And um Dummerston as it's a fundraiser for AIDS Walk, which so I'm HIV positive, and so these things matter to me, and to certainly now in the time in which we're living, to really make a concerted effort,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
build community and meet people. And we need each other, we always have, but now I think we're really truly seeing how much we do need each other.
yeah, yeah.
So
And I feel like there are I think there are very few individuals who truly vibrate in a way that seems authentic and intentional. And I knew there was something special about you. Well, you're just special in general. It didn't take me to sort of figure that out. You just were, Yolanda. So just putting that out there. Um, I think when I first heard you sing, it was over at Easton Mountain, and you sang the song Fly Away,
oh
oh,
yes,
oh
I'll fly
Lord.
away.
And I
Oh,
was like, oh my goodness, right? Because I think a combination of the songs that you sang, and so that's one of the ones that really like got me hooked.
oh.
And then the other one was Love Divine, which I was like, I'm just loving this. I'm just loving like the energy of it, and what is because I feel a lot of the songs that you've done, or a majority of the songs that you've done, is very sort of gospel, very sort
Yes,
of very churchy-ish.
yes,
I don't know if
yes.
that's appropriate for me to say it that way.
Yeah, no, I
Um,
think I intentionally, yeah, embrace that. That's um well, I was born and raised in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. So in 1956, if you can believe, and came out of the closet in the fourth grade. So like there the musical influences in the town I grew up in and certainly encompassed, gospel, blues, and rockabilly, really, like and then that became rock and roll, and I sort of grew up in that time, when Elvis was coming up and being who he was and all that, and my dad was really involved in all of that in our area because Muscle Shoals was known as the hit recording capital of the world
oh,
at that time. It's an hour below Nashville, but he went to high school with a lot of those guys that started the music industry in Muscle Shoals, and so music was always, and of course we were regular churchgoers and everything like that, but it meant more to me than it did. It was more, going to church was more than a social obligation for me. Like when I was very, very young, I always wanted to know God, and know spirit and what that was. And so, the songs, the whole gospel experience, was wonderful to me. I mean, there's a lot of stories there of things that didn't go so well, um but basically my um connection to spirit, I think, has been something that I've always been aware of and always wanted to celebrate and also recognize in other people, and so I'll Fly Away is one of those old classic gospel songs that I absolutely love and love singing. I started playing with a gospel music band, bluegrass band, when I was 17. So, that's you get a heavy dose of that kind of thing even in the songs my original songs that I write. There's that influence, and of course Love Divine is my interpretation of First Corinthians chapter 13.
mm.
So yeah, yeah, very, very important to me usually. Yeah, but I have other things. I went through a real in your face kind of queerness, when I was a lot younger, wearing absolutely outrageous outfits and doing songs of empowerment, but not necessarily at that time. I was more like, and we all need, political activism is still part of my life. But what I mean is, like really, you know, F you if you don't like it, like that kind of stuff. So my songs at that time were a little different, but always about a message of personal empowerment.
So I don't know if a lot of people know because I just learned this myself. So you're a singer, you're a songwriter, you're a performer, actor, activism, and you're a painter, right?
Yes.
Like,
Oh, here's my paintings, right?
so I was checking your website and I saw all of these gorgeous sort of like psychedelic,
Yeah,
like emotional, spiritual, sort of like looking on the other side of the veil, kind of feel like
absolutely.
really dreamy kind of feel to
Yeah.
it. And I didn't I knew you were a singer and performer, but when I was like, oh, Yolanda also paints too? Like what do you not do?
Well, uh, almost anything artistic, I've tried to put my hand in at some point. Uh, but the the world of art and self-expression has always been my spiritual path. And my first um foray into expressing myself artistically was through painting and drawing. And again, we grew up in a town where it's a very interesting town because there's a lot of musicians there and actually a lot of visual artists there. So my parents understood from a young age that I was talented, and they wanted to encourage that, which I was really happy about that. So, they sent me to private art lessons and things like that. And I developed over the years a sense of sort of abstract expressionism that has figural images in the, I don't know if you can see, I mean, if
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
looking, you
yeah.
know, you can see figural images. And so I began to uh, sort of understand that if I just let myself go and let spirit guide me, I might not have said that at the time I started, but anyway, but just let whatever's going on inside of me guide my paintings and drawings and things like that. Um, then I would discover something about myself is what
Mm.
I would was thinking. And I have, like, I've got paintings over here in my house from, I don't know, 10 years old, and my mother painted too, so I have paintings of hers. And all throughout my life, even with Glenn and everything like that, I've always painted, and I do think it is a veil. I mean, seeing beyond the veil. I do think
Yeah, no, yeah.
it is.
When I was checking your website and I was like looking at some of these pictures, it was sort of like me observing like this alternate world from another angle,
Yeah.
because it was sort of just like very bright and like lots of colors and
Mhm.
like the colors felt like they were moving and
Mhm.
some of them were just like shapes and like shapes of like humanoid
Mhm. Mhm.
kind of folks. I was like.
Mhm.
Oh, very nice.
Well, that's interesting too. I mean, I'm glad you can see all that. One of the things that happened to me on my journey as I was making some of my paintings are really huge, like, 6 feet by, 4 feet wide, stuff like that. Um, and in those paintings, especially in the 80s, I was so because even though I said I came out in the fourth grade, I didn't understand what I was coming at. All I understood was the word homosexual. And I had read this Time magazine article, and
And I
it's
would imagine at the time there was a negative connotation
yeah,
with that.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. And but for me, I was reading this Time magazine article about homosexuality, and it was the first time that I ever like found a word that seemed to fit, because I always knew I wasn't like my brother, I wasn't like my dad or anything like that, although they were trying to raise me as a boy. I always felt feminine. I always thought that I was a feminine being in this body, but I didn't have a dysphoria about my body. I was okay with my body. But it still didn't make sense that I had this feminine psyche, somehow. And so I assumed I was a gay man, but I, wasn't. So getting back to the paintings, what happened in the 80s was that I was beginning to, as I was painting, um, this sort of, well, I guess what we would used to call transvestite figure began to emerge. And as I began to, every painting that I would paint, this figure would emerge. And I was like, that's really interesting. But I didn't make the connection that that was me.
Mhm.
And then later on, uh, in the 90s, the late 90s, early 2000s, I began to get the connection. I began to really understand that, I am a she in this body that is called male, identified as male or whatever, assigned male at birth. Um, and that doesn't bother me. this is my own personal feminine body, you know? And Glenn recognized that. So when we got together, I had always been trying to be a gay man and all of that, and fall into what gay men do. And I'm not casting aspersions on anything. It's just that that wasn't me. And I didn't understand why I didn't fit. And so finally I met Glenn, who identified as a gay man. And at that time, I was presenting in a masculine way. But he began to get to know me, and he was like, why don't you just allow yourself to be who you are? And with his love and encouragement, I had the courage to identify myself. And then I came across these words, trans, femme, gender queer, and I was like, that's perfect because the gender queer part is like, okay, I'm in this body. I'm not interested in surgery or hormones or anything. But I do consider it my feminine body, and I prefer the pronoun she. And people have been calling me Yolanda. By that time, people have been calling me Yolanda for years, because that's a fun story in New York City in the 80s. But anyway, for years and years and years, people were calling me Yolanda. And I was like, why not just make it my legal name? So I did all of that, but it took me a long time. I did all of that. I was looking back at my records um, in 2015, somewhere around in there. So it took me a long time, to fully understand who I am. And now it's unfolding even more, and there's more to know. And I think that's important on a person's journey if they're open to um, rediscovering and letting the truth of who you are like unfold and be present in your life. That's a really wonderful journey that you can do your whole life long.
Yeah.
But sometimes we get stuck in an identity that we think is who we are, and we don't allow that. So I
One thing I enjoy asking my guests, and it sort of might shift us a little bit, but what are you curious about these days? What gets your curiosity going?
very good question. Well, actually, I would say um, I'm curious about this present time that we're living in and the extreme changes that are happening. And I actually think that it's all part of a bigger picture that none of us can see right now, really. However, I'm very curious about how this is developing and how it's unfolding. And my curiosity leads me to trust spirit even more, because I have this practice around A Course in Miracles. And uh, one of the um, uh, one of the lessons is I don't know what anything is for, and that puts me in a curious place. Instead of thinking I know what everything is for, um,
Mm,
I'm open to discovering
mm,
what it's for. And let me make it clear that I do not support this regime. Nothing like that at all. Um, and it's very terrifying. It's really scary, and people are already suffering immensely from the actions of this current government run by a felon. So I will just say that. And
yeah.
however, uh, I don't want to exclude people from my life that voted for this felon because we need each other.
Yeah.
We need each other.
And I think it sort of goes back to specifically when you say we need each other, it goes back to sort of like that statement that I read about building bridges, right? Like
Yeah.
I think regardless of where you are
Mhm.
across the aisle, across the ocean, or
Mhm.
just across the way, like it's a matter of like, at least for me, when I've sort of been in your presence or when I've sort of seen you perform, there's always a glimmer of hope. There's always a glimmer of faith. There's definitely like um, vulnerability,
Yeah,
and being able to sort of stand where you are in the moment, in the present,
yeah,
and breathe.
yeah, 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 yeah. And it's hard for a lot of us right now. I mean, it's not been easy for me either. I mean, it's very challenging. So, where do you put where do you put your angst, your worry, your depression, your all of that, and where's your faith? How does all of this work together? Well, um, Jesus lived during the time of Rome, and that was an abusive patriarchal situation, and he got killed, so but then he rose again. So I'm in the place of thriving. My mantra for myself right now is I rise, I thrive. I
Mhm.
rise, I thrive, I rise, I thrive, and I'm taking as many people along with me as I can. And that's why we bought this land actually to begin with, me and Glenn, because we had a sense that it was going in this direction, and we wanted to create something which hopefully uh, will one day have some sort of retreat center built on back here, um, where where we create community and art and love and do the things we know are good for us and for the world, grow food, things like that. So
And
that's the
and and and
long-term goal.
and I think I get the flavor that because I know, so because we sort of like hang out with the sort of the same crowd,
Yeah,
or familiar with the same crowd, I should say.
yeah,
Um, One of the things that I learned about you is that, like, I think hearing you about sort of community, like the radical fairies, right?
yeah.
Because I know you've had some experience in the radical fairy and sort of
Mhm.
living in community and sort of living in a spiritual sense, and like
Yeah.
I even though I know you're sort of, at least in my assumption, you let me know what what you know, Yolanda. um, Even though like I get the sense like it most of the stuff that you do and your pastoral work is sort of really Christian sort of
Ac-
lens.
Actually not. Um, I'm an interfaith minister and a non-dual minister. So I was raised as a Christian, but I have never identified as a Christian. But this is the funny thing about that is that I love Jesus. Jesus is my guru. So both me and Glenn had this same feeling. He was brought up. His father was a Baptist minister, and raised in the South and all of that. And so we all know, that sort of um, uh, culture and impact that it can have on a person's life. But Glenn and I were very similar in the way that we processed it all. We understood that it was Jesus who was the teacher, and Christianity itself was, well, it was off-putting because we were queer and we were out and we were loud and about it, and that caused problems. So I've never identified as a Christian, but I have a great love for Jesus, and have actually had spiritual encounters with Jesus, which blew my mind. So when we decided to become ministers, we went to Interfaith Seminary, One Spirit Interfaith, and we studied world religions, and many of those we had already uh, studied and worked with. Glenn was very, very literate in spiritual knowledge and stuff. And we had already begun, me and him, this group that meets on every Wednesday night. We started that way back in 2008, I think it was, centered around A Course in Miracles. Well, I had already um, uh, begun to study A Course in Miracles in the 80s when Marianne Williamson, kind of brought it into the public view. She didn't write A Course in Miracles, but she wrote a book called Return to Love, which was based on A Course in Miracles, and that really opened the door for its popularity, A Course in Miracles' popularity. So I had started reading that in the 80s. At that time, um, I was smack dab in New York City during the initial AIDS crisis where people were dying right and left. And we would have these meetings on Wednesday nights called the Healing Circle, where Marianne would be there and speak to us. And so A Course in Miracles had been a part of my life for a really long time. And then Glenn and I got together, and the course is very Buddhist almost, really. And it describes itself as mind training, not a religion. So I don't really go for religion. I'm very much uh let's connect with spirit in the way that's the most authentic for each individual. That's how I feel about it. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
But of course I incorporate, I love Sanskrit and Sanskrit chants. So I incorporate it's fun for me to incorporate Christian music sometimes with Sanskrit chants. And so I play around with a lot of different aspects of different traditions.
And I not that I'm because I don't really dive into sort of that, even though I grew up in the sort of Protestant Catholic church and going to church every Sunday, and I sort of don't really resonate with that. I'm more sort of like ancestry based, sort of
Yes,
earth based,
yes, yes,
and there's something about from my little understanding and little knowledge, something about specifically the teaching of Jesus, which seems more spiritual based than religious based, which
absolutely,
seems
absolutely.
more community based than sort of organized religion based, right? And so
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
something about it. Once again, that goes back to that quick little blurb about community, right? There's
yeah.
something about the cornerstone of community, not necessarily that it needs to be spiritual, but there's something about it that
Mhm.
does
Yeah,
open up the space and conversation and way of being
yeah,
differently than any other way of building community.
yeah. I agree with you. So from my perspective, just being human is a spiritual experience. I mean, you don't have to go anywhere or practice any certain kind of rules or do this or that. That's actually all leaving us now. I know this chaos looks really awful, but the fear-based position of patriarchy, you know, uh, religion, government, all that stuff is being purged. As more of us, like you and me, have these kind of conversations and wake up, however you want to, talk about that, um, it is so strong. It's so evolving, and it's not necessarily, people in droves paying attention to religion. It's more people in droves paying attention to how they really want to live in this world.
Mm.
And I think more and more people are wanting to choose love rather than hate. We see hate because it's so loud and everything, and love is quiet.
Yeah.
So when I listen for guidance, I listen to the quiet voice rather than the voice.
Hmm. Hmm.
And again, just you don't have to do anything to be spiritual because you already are. That's the essence of who what a human being is.
Right.
We've just covered it up with rules, regulations, conditioning, blah blah blah. And the process for me is um one of letting go of conditioning once you recognize that it's there. And that's what's so effective to me about mind training from A Course in Miracles, because it gives you something to replace these thoughts with that are detrimental to you, and so you can replace your thoughts with something that gives you strength and courage to move forward. And the more you know repeat these thoughts to yourself, these life-giving thoughts to yourself, and the more you work with these in your everyday life, you see major changes happen. Like, so many stories from so many friends of mine, but and of course my life too. But yeah, I approach it that way.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
If you could collaborate with any artist, living or dead, who would it be and why?
Oh wow. That's a great question. Let's see. Cyndi Lauper.
Yeah.
I love Cyndi Lauper. I don't know. I mean, there's so many artists that have made an impression on my life, but there's something about Cyndi Lauper that I just resonate with, and to me her voice is so expressive and powerful. And as a matter of fact, when she first came out, broke out in the 80s and everything, oh my God, I would just listen to her records over and over and over and over again and try to sing how she sang and try to reach those octaves. She actually helped me um, do something that I now do with my voice, which is um, I have a nice wide range of octaves, and I can hold a note forever if I want to. Like, I can hit a note and just really hold it, for a long time. And I was just like, I love that. And and that comes from me listening to her over and over and singing in her key and then singing in a lower key, just I don't know. She was a great teacher for me. So but she's still with us, she's still around. Um and she's on her farewell tour. But yeah, if anybody I could collaborate with, I think it would be Cyndi Lauper. Yeah.
I love that. I could see it too. I so could see it.
Well, and then of course, in the 80s with all of her, East Village chic and the crazy hair and the outfits and everything. Like, I was doing that too. I was running around the East Village with, braids in my hair and like, spandex and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I don't know. Just a sensibility there that I've always loved. And she's grown into this beautiful mature singer, that can sing anything,
Yeah.
So anyway, my little
No, no, I love it. So what are some of the challenges and rewards of performing live?
that's a good one. Well, anything can happen when you're performing live. Anything. Oh my God. So many things. Like, so you're on stage, you can't hear the other people you're playing with. What do? You just, the sound system's not good or whatever. You're in this club and it's like, I can't hear a thing. What do? You just keep going. Um, I've been performing. I was performing at a church. This was really funny. Uh, and I was wearing a two-piece outfit. I was wearing a church suit, the lady suit, and it had a top and a skirt. Well, right in the middle of performing, my skirt falls off.
That's a different kind of show.
Luckily, I am, the queen of foundation garments, so I'm all covered. But my singing partner, this wonderful woman named Doreen Younglove, who she doesn't live close to me anymore, but we years and years we sang together, and she's just absolutely wonderful. So my skirt falls off. I'm standing in front of the church. I keep singing. I just keep singing, right? And she sort of like slinks to the floor, pulls up my skirt, and we just keep going. And luckily, I was standing behind, I don't know, a podium or some kind of thing, and it wasn't like hugely obvious, but it was hilarious. So anyway, things like that. Um,
And I sort of love that imagery, and for me, like I sort of take it in sort of like the self-care aspect or mental health aspect is you just keep going.
just
Like
keep going.
regardless of what's going on, yeah, it's uncomfortable. You could stop, you could choose to stop and sort of address this,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
you just kept on going.
Yeah,
And the fact that you had somebody there to support you, right? And not make it such a
big
like a
deal.
big thing. And
Mm-mm.
like I felt like that was very validating.
Yeah, it was. It was really great. It was like teamwork, and so yeah, all kinds of things like that have happened to me on stage. My wigs come on, sometimes I'm all dressed up, in huge drag and all that stuff, and I'll be emoting or whatever, and my wig will go flying off.
How was it? Because you were also doing story time at the
Yes. Oh, that
library.
was
Like
fun. Yeah,
how
yeah,
how was
yeah.
that? I'm curious about like like even though I think in our political climate that's not gonna fly
Yeah.
to a certain
Maybe
degree.
probably
How was
not.
how was that? And like, because I would imagine because you were sort of like in that time frame when you were
Yeah.
performing, and then all of a sudden it was like not okay to
Yeah.
do that. Like what was the experience and
Wow.
any negative backlash? Again,
Mhm.
share to your comfort level about
Yeah.
how that was.
Well, thank you. The thing about drag story hour is that it was so innocent. Like we were just literally wanting to read books to children. I mean, you know, why not? Like, what's the big scary deal about having kids around a drag queen? I mean, like, I just have always found it so weird because what else do people do to entertain kids? They hire these really scary clowns, you know, they have all kinds of different kinds of people reading stories to children on TV, in the libraries, all kinds. You know, I remember growing up and there was this woman named Erlene, and she had a little TV program called Erlene in Storyland, and she would read books, and she would have like, and she was all dressed up like a fairy and a magic wand, all this stuff, and we would go to the studio live and listen to her read and all that, and it was awesome. So that's what I was doing. I was being Erlene in Storyland, and I personally never, well, apparently somebody told me I did get attacked in some kind of media and they were using my picture to show everybody how horrible it all was, but I was dressed as a butterfly.
I love that picture of you. Is it the picture of you where your
Yeah,
wings are out? I
yeah,
love
yeah.
that. I love
I
that
do too.
picture.
I absolutely love it.
And
Somehow,
I think there's a video. I can't remember where I saw it. There's a video. I think of you like twirling in that. I'm just like,
yeah,
yes.
that was the greatest thing. And actually, ABC News or something came one day, and they were very lovely. They just wanted to see what I was doing, and I was all dressed up as a butterfly, and I was like, I'm just reading books. Like, what's the big deal? So the hysteria over all of this as we have gone through the years, um, is well, it's such a lack of humanity.
Yeah.
you know um I just don't understand why, and it's something I can't understand anyway, so I have to just turn it over to God. It's something that I feel like that's in our culture right now that just wants to attack everything that's not straight, cisgendered, and white, you know?
Yeah.
And
Heteronormative. Yeah.
it's, yeah, heteronormative whiteness. And it is dissolving. That's all I can say. I know it is.
Yeah.
However, the attacks right now are so, and so, um, throughout the years that I was doing Drag Story, and I was a founding member of Drag Story Hour in New York City, um, throughout the years, at first everything was fine, and then all of a sudden,
It
people got,
wasn't.
yeah, and then all of a sudden it wasn't, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there were these huge protests outside the libraries and all of these kinds of things. And we had to go in, police escorts and all this stuff. And, I just went about my business, like, because I was there to read books to kids, that's
Yeah.
and so it didn't dampen my performance for the kids, and we had fun and all those kinds of things. However, I think it just has gotten to the point where you just can't really do it anymore. I don't know. I think, I've left New York and we don't really have an active chapter here in Vermont. We do kind of, but it's not as active as it was. So I think you're right. I think it's just the political climate that we're in, and this intention to um, disrupt and discredit and harass anybody that's not, again, heteronormative, cisgendered, and white. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So
And there's something about it that like I think it taps into people's fears and miseducation,
yes, it
right?
does.
And
That's very well said.
when
Yeah.
you're not informed about a
Hmm.
particular group or a particular
Hmm.
situation or whatever it is, like it's easy to be duped to believe that it's them versus us, right?
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
and if you're savvy enough, you could really manipulate and gaslight people
Absolutely.
to do some really disgusting,
Yeah.
evil, inhuman things.
Yeah. Exactly. And again, I feel that that's a streak in humanity that's being purged right now.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're going to see it get worse before it gets better. And I mean, it's already pretty bad, but I still think,
Right, right. It's not even
you
been a
know,
year.
yeah, it had been a year. Yeah, exactly. So, but it will get better. I know it will.
I'm glad somebody's being optimistic.
Yeah. No, I really know it will. I mean, I'm 68 years old. I grew up in redneck Alabama, and have always been bullied and pushed around and whatever, and then there's always been these horrible wars, and it as long as I've lived, there's always been some kind of horrible drama. I mean, I lived in Alabama, where there's lynchings and, like, so there's always been this
Yeah.
streak, you know, and so going back to my spiritual practice and things that I've learned across this era in which we are in is called the Kali Yuga. That's a Hindu way of looking at the ages and stuff like that. And we are literally, I mean, I know this was the catchphrase in the 60s, but literally, it, takes a while in our human years. We literally are in the dawn of the age of Aquarius. We really, really are. And we are passing out of this hate, this patriarchal, top down, um, kind of world. We are literally on the edge of the Kali Yuga, moving into the next cycle, which is Aquarius, dawning of the edge of Aquarius. So I have great hope there. I see changes in people's hearts. I really do. Did you see? Oh my God, 34,000 people showed up for Bernie and AOC in
No.
34,000 people
Wow.
showed up for Bernie and AOC. I forget where it was. It just happened a couple days ago or something. But people don't want to live like this anymore. We are enlightened society. Whether you like the word woke or not, we are an enlightened society, you know. And if it's 50-50 in the country, which I think it's not quite that, um, I believe there's more of us that want this kind of difference, this kind of change in society, you know.
Well, I'm in the mindset that I truly believe that people are good, and I
Yeah, I
truly
do too.
believe people will take the shirt off the back, take the
Yeah,
shirt off the back to support you. Like
yeah,
I also live in Vermont, and
yeah.
I remembered when I think it was like Hurricane Irene. I think it was Hurricane Irene that
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
like in
Mhm.
Vermont, it sort of like shut everything
Everything
down.
down. Yeah.
And
Mhm.
people were like giving people rides, people were coming
Yes.
over checking on people, and I know that I know that I live in a state that sort of more so purple than blue.
Yeah, yeah,
uh
yeah,
and so just that alone was like, wow, people
yeah,
are are really nice, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
um
And
anyway,
I think if you give people the chance, they will be
yes,
nice, you know.
yeah,
Um, one of my practices is making sure that my channels of love are open so that, I can really engage with people regardless of what's their position is or whatever like that. I had, I mentioned I'm doing a concert on April 5th. Somebody on my mailing list, you know, emailed me back and said, I'm now a Trump supporter. Am I allowed to come to your um event? And I said, of course you are, and I also said, I'm disappointed that you feel that you're support you need to support this regime. However, you are a divine expression of God's love and you are welcome wherever I perform,
yeah, yeah,
so there's that. It takes an effort, I think, sometimes. And I also don't think you have to, I think you can be straight up with people. I
yeah.
don't appreciate you supporting this regime, which is detrimental to all of us. You're an LGBTQ person also, you know, but however, that's already done.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
so here we are now.
yeah.
So let's build something together, that kind of thing.
Um, how do you maintain your mental health, emotional well-being, in sort of like this demanding industry that you find yourself in?
Daily spiritual practice, like, and whatever that, for when I say that, that means a particular thing. Like I, um get up every morning. I do the Course in Miracles lesson for the day. I have a meditation group that we meet online, and I literally spend from like 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. every morning in prayer and meditation. That's how I do it. And I'm not saying that you have to do that or anybody else has to do that,
Right, that's just
but,
yours. Yeah.
but that's my routine. And honestly, like, Glenn and I did this too. So it's a habit that he helped me create, and thank God for it, because especially with my online community, I have an online church that I'm very involved in, and we meet every morning for meditation, and so it has really kept me grounded for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, so on as a therapist, one of the things that I always tell people is to get into some sort of practice, get into some sort of routine, get into some
Yeah.
sort of regularity where either, because I work with a lot of people in recovery, so either reading the big book or working with people, whatever the process of change. I've uh, DBT,
Yeah.
providing facilitation for DBT groups. And one of the things that I'm always talking about is like sometimes doing something in the morning, like a yoga practice,
Mhm.
or like going to the gym, or whatever it is, as long as you're doing it on a consistent basis, because it sort of feeds you.
It
And again,
does.
right, like it doesn't necessarily need to look like the way that you do it.
No, no.
And sometimes I feel like I also tell folks like sometimes the bare minimum is okay too,
Yeah.
right? So like an intentional mopping the floor, intentionally
Exactly.
doing your dishes,
Yes.
intentionally cooking, right? Like
Yeah.
how do you make the mundane
Yes.
uh, a practice? It doesn't necessarily have to have the word spiritual, right?
Right, right.
Like because for me it's really about intention. How do you sort of
Yeah.
refocus your intention on the
Hmm.
moment, whatever that is, because there is something about that practice. And for a long time, I did yoga and
Yeah.
specifically tantra yoga, and so there's
Oh,
something
yeah.
about using like sort of like the energetic aspect of your body, energetic aspect of your emotions and your
Hmm.
spiritual to sort of start off the day.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I encourage people, again, it doesn't have to look the way that you do it or the way that I do it,
Hmm.
but engaging in some sort of intentional practice, which I
Yes.
think is important. Um,
That's it. That's the whole thing. I just happen to use the word spiritual before the word practice, but everything is spiritual. Like, so you know, mopping the floor is a spiritual, literally, you're absolutely right. I mean, and it doesn't require 3 hours a day. Um, you know, for me, it's all about just taking the time to quiet
mm,
my mind.
mm, mm.
Because here we are in this world where we go, 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 go. All we do, look at our phones all the time and or online or Facebook or whatever, whatever, whatever. There's got to be a time in your day, if you want to stay sane, I think, where you quiet your mind, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
And I do think it's best in the morning, but, doesn't have to be, you know?
Mm.
So I have gotten quieter and quieter in my mind and heart over the years, and I just don't miss that busy, yacky monkey mind. I don't miss it. And I'm still on my phone. I'm still scrolling Facebook, I'm still
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
things,
yeah,
but
yeah,
but with a different intention or something. There's a
yeah.
different something different about it. Like I don't spend as much time as I used to.
Right.
I'm looking for a recipe or I'm doing this or I'm doing that or answering emails or whatever, whatever. But the time spent in the morning for me quieting my mind, putting something really positive in there that can carry me throughout the day is the way to make it through this kind of stuff.
So as we're starting to getting ready to wind down, like how do you talk about spiritual practice, your art, your mental health, and self care? Like how do you? And again, you've definitely shared a lot of that stuff. Like, does that come into the forefront of your mind that like yeah, sometimes what you do in a spiritual practice aids the mental health, and sometimes
Oh
what
yeah,
you do in sort of to take care of your mental health sort of aids in sort of self-care, and they all sort of
right.
like feed off of each other. And I'm
Definitely.
curious, like, how does that tapestry look like for you?
Yeah, that's beautiful the way you just put that because I guess my approach, well, I know it is, but what you're describing when you just said all that to me is a non-dual approach to life. You know what I mean? Like everything, I don't separate things out. Like I may use the word spiritual practice, but it's not separated from getting in the car and taking my friend to work, because I have this friend that so um everything is part of that which I truly am. And as I discover more and more about who I truly am, then I don't have to worry about, am I doing this right? Is this the right practice for me? Is this, what am I doing? Should I not be, you know, making this kind of music? Should I not be making this kind of art? Like all of those questions fall away because authenticity to me is hearing your intuitive voice and following it. And however you can get to that is the way to get to that,
Right.
you know.
Right.
Uh so yeah, I think it's all one thing. Yeah, I
Hmm.
do.
Yeah, I know for me the journey of sort of accepting sort of like my queerness and accepting my witchiness, sort of accepting my sort of just all of me,
Hmm.
was a process.
Hmm.
And it's one of those things where I never thought that I would be here because
Hmm.
I let go of the assumption of who I think I should have been,
Yeah.
or the assumption of my parents, because my more so my mom wanted me to become a priest, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
even my letting that go of the assumption of what people think I should have been, right? Like
Yeah.
as an individual who struggle with
Hmm.
learning issues, I struggle with dyslexia.
Hmm.
And so in the early years when I was getting ready to go off to college, I had an educator who was like, "Why go off to college? Why don't you just become a florist or a hairstylist?" And in the back of my mind, I'm just like, "Oh, maybe I should." And then a part of me is like, "Well, that's not. I don't feel called to do that."
Yeah.
Not saying that I'm putting that down, or not
No,
saying
no,
that
no,
career path
no.
isn't a good way of making a living, or isn't a good
Right,
way for
right.
folks. For me, it didn't align with how I felt, or how I wanted my future self to look like.
Yeah.
And that work of letting other assumptions and other people's chitter chatter of who they
Yeah.
think I am
Yeah.
was a heavy lift,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be able to live in a very authentic way, whatever that means.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a journey.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. It definitely is a journey. And you just have to be open to it, um, or not. But I find that as I'm open to uh, how I'm evolving, I'll say it that way, how it's evolving through this learning device. I call my body a learning device, but how it is all evolving through this experience, that gives me flexibility. It makes me, even in my body, it makes me feel confident that I can do what I'm called to do. It's just, I don't want to say, this is the way it must be done, and I have to do it this way, and that's that. And you have to do it this way too. It's just like, that is deadly, you know.
And I think for some people there's something that they get off by controlling, right? Like
Yeah.
I think you know when you don't know, your reflex is to try to control, is to try to
Hmm.
tamp down, is
Yeah.
to try to make yourself smaller.
Hmm. Yeah.
I'm curious, what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned in your artistic life, and getting more comfortable with who you are?
I would put it this way, go with the flow. I mean, that's the biggest lesson I've learned in my life, and I've just always done that. I don't know how I came to the conclusion or whatever that this was the way to live my life, but I never let anybody tell me what I was supposed to do with my life. I just said, my parents weren't happy about me being an artist or anything, and then coming out was not a happy time for them. And, you know, um, I think my mother held on to the day she died that I would, marry a woman and have children and stuff. And I just never, ever, ever let anyone tell me what to do with my life. I mean, they could talk all day and I'd just be sitting there going, that's not me, that's you. That's not me. I understood from a very early age that there was nothing wrong with me,
Yeah,
that people that are telling me something's wrong with me is that's their problem, not mine.
yeah.
And I don't know how that happened other than just I
So,
don't
so,
know.
so some folks would say that that's old soul or reincarnation.
Yeah, it could be. Yes, yes, yes. I love that idea too. Um, so yeah, however it came to be that I've been this way, that's my biggest takeaway. Certainly the art that I create and that I've always created since I was really young was a huge intuitive guide on my path. And of course, my parents being, well-meaning, tried to discourage me, of course, from following an artistic path. But I no, I just what else?
What else?
Yeah.
And then the last question, because I always like to leave our viewers, and if you've gotten this far, viewers, then please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe,
Yay.
because it really helps the channel, because the algorithm, it just
Mhm.
knows.
It does.
Um, so if you were mentoring, or if you were mentoring somebody into the artistic or performance world, like, what are some things that you would sort of guide them, that you wish that you knew as you were getting into the industry?
Wow, that's a good one. Um, well, again, I would always encourage that person to follow the uniqueness of who they are in their, and even if you think that there's no place in the world for the uniqueness of who you are, um, follow it anyway, because eventually you'll see where you fit. Or if you don't fit, you'll open a whole new genre or world for people. And both of those things have happened in my life. I've um, been a person who has blazed trails, and now I'm in a place where I see where I fit. So there were many, many. It's not an easy thing to do, to be an artist and to be committed to it and to find ways to express. It's not. It's financially not easy. It's emotionally not easy. It's spiritually not easy. It's there's a lot of questioning, and you either have to, and a lot of rejection, so you have to have some kind of strong center core
Hmm.
in order to, you know, live your life as an artist. And that's the first thing that I wish I had been told. Um, it's not about I want to be like so and so. It's who is this and what is this gift,
Yeah.
and following that. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. So, as we're ending, what projects are you currently working on? And please share any sort of
Woo!
things
Woo!
you wanna let the
Woo!
viewers know.
Well, my next concert is April 5th. If you're in the Vermont area or even Massachusetts, you can drive up, or New Hampshire. Um, it's gorgeous. This concert spiritual happening that me and Freddie Freeman and Jay Freeman and Tyler Wansley have created. We call it the Circle of Love. It's it's very nurturing. All are welcome. It's kid friendly, everything like that. That's my next thing that is happening, which is April 5th at Dummerston Church, First Congregational Church of Dummerston in Dummerston Center, Vermont. And that's going to be at 7 p.m. And it's a fundraiser for AIDS Walk of Brattleboro. And really, really, really excited about that. And then later on in the year, this TV show that I just filmed that I had the chance to be a guest star on will be released at the end of 2025. I can't tell you any kind of more than that, but I'll be shouting it from the mountaintop, so it'll be all over my Facebook page. Um, and then, my intention is to just continue to create what I call spiritual happenings with my music, around Vermont and around wherever I can do all of that. And if you want to know more about that, it's my website's yolanda.net. Specifically, if you want to know about my current concert series, it's yolanda.net/circle. But all of that is on my homepage when you arrive. So
And I'll have her homepage link down in the bio. So
yeah.
if you don't know Yolanda, Reverend Yolanda, then you're missing out. And if this is your first time being introduced to Reverend Yolanda, then yay for you, because you're in the know now, and that's half the battle right there.
Oh, good. Thank you, darling. It's so
Thank
sweet to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Yolanda, for gracing me with your time and knowledge and insight. Because I the doing this is really about connection, right? And I think
Yeah.
it really goes with what you're sharing
Yeah.
earlier. And
I
I'm
yeah.
always about like connecting with people, and
You
I
are. That is something that I know about you, and I've always loved about you. It's just like whenever I see you have this wonderful smile on your face, you're just like, and it's delightful to talk to you. It really is. So
well, folks, I'll see you on the other side, and thank you for joining me in another episode of All Wise Transformation.